Hello, happy Wednesday. Hello, happy Wednesday. I'm doing a test stream this morning. Got a different camera set up and microphone set up, and I'm making sure that the NVIDIA broadcast background noise defeating feature is not muffling my voice too much, so hopefully this is coming out okay. So I thought this would be a good excuse, a good reason to come in and make a recording. I don't do these that often, as you know, if you've ever been on my channel. Some people complain maybe I don't do it often enough, but I am not narcissistic enough to want to get on here at least once a day and make a bunch of videos. I just don't do that. If I don't have anything really significant to say or add to other videos I've got, it's not that often I repeat myself. But I know that in the learning process, we need to repeat ourselves, don't we? And not everybody who comes here has seen earlier videos I've done. And I hate repeating myself, but I understand it's a necessary evil. Welcome to human interaction, to communication 101. We repeat ourselves as we must. Anyway, I thought one of the good excuses to pop on here too would be just a reminder of what's going on in the Middle East right now. Things are setting up where we are getting into end times prophecies big time. We've been there this entire generation. And it looked like we were on the precipice the last couple of years with all the things going on. Russia moving further and further in the direction of Israel, slowly plowing toward the west of themselves and downward, moving down into Croatia, just on the other side of the Black Sea, and surrounding and mobilizing more and more forces down into Syria, Turkey doing the same, and of course Iran doing the same. And everyone's sitting right on the outside border of Israel. And so we look at this, we say, well, this Ezekiel 38 and 39 Gog and Magog war type of scenario, it must set up. Everybody must get into place prophetically before this kind of a war can pop off. And so that looked like that's been happening. And we knew it would not happen overnight. It couldn't happen overnight. But at the same time, because there is wrath involved in that period, as we see when we get down, starting verse 17, 18, 19 of Ezekiel 38, God's fierce anger and his wrath. As believers, Christ already bore fierce anger and wrath for us on the cross. There will be no double jeopardy. We won't be punished. We will not receive wrath. And this is what we get when we get into 1 Thessalonians chapter 1. We see this in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. So wrath is not made for the church, the body and bride of Christ. And Revelation 3:10 makes very clear, says the same thing to the faithful church at Philadelphia, Revelation 3:10, that this is a time coming upon the world when this trouble is going to be coming upon those on the entire earth. So, and it's for them on the earth, those who dwell on the earth. Not for us. We will be rescued. Revelation 3:10 says that. We will be rescued. But this is coming upon the whole world, and it is for them who dwell on the earth. We're not the them. It's not we who dwell on the earth. It's a them. So where are we? We're going to be in a space shuttle circling, watching this going on. We're going to be on the moon. Is the Enterprise going to come and beam us up so we can see what's going on? And we still live in this existence, but we're not on the earth. It's absurd. It's, there's no space Uber is going to come and take us off the earth. So Revelation 3:10 makes it very clear that it is trouble, very particular trouble, coming upon the whole world, and it is for they who dwell upon the earth. So great, he says he's going to rescue us from that. That's what Jesus says by dictation to John when he writes these letters. This letter to the church, the faithful church of Philadelphia, he makes this very clear. And we've gone through this before in earlier videos. So this time is coming. And what must pop it off is going to have to be, for various reasons, the Gog and Magog war. And the war is going to create the kind of scenario that we see in Revelation chapter 6, which is the beginning of this judgment upon the earth with the seals. The seals very much look like the kinds of things that you get out of war, the result of war. You get the hunger, and you've got the economic issues. You've got the disease happening. Things that upset the planet to a degree that even the animals began going after people. Oh yes, it says that. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be your pets, but you've got starving people, starving animals, and you've got people going after each other. You're going to have a great quake, which great quake is also mentioned in Ezekiel 38. Yeah, so you've got world war is what it's going to be. It's going to kick off a world war. So, and we've been on the precipice of that now for quite some time. You have to agree. Well, what does that scenario look like? Well, it doesn't look like things are going to get better and better and better, and then finally we're going to have peace on the earth, and then finally we're going to evangelize the whole world, and Jesus is going to step down and come here and make this happy little kingdom. It doesn't. That's not the scenario. That's not the way he says he's going to do it. First, there's going to be a judgment, trouble upon the whole world, Revelation 3:10. Sorry, post-millennial people, it doesn't happen in the ways that you think. In the pastoral epistles, it makes it very clear that in the last days, how awful it's going to be, and people will be lovers of self, etc., and violence and so forth. It's just going to be getting worse and worse and worse until Jesus has to step down, because it's what does the scripture say? Unless those days are shortened by his return to the earth, unless those days are shortened, no flesh should be saved. And that's what the scripture says. It's not get happy, then he decides, oh, great job, here I come. No flesh should be saved unless those days are shortened. He shortens them by his physical return actually back down onto the earth. So this scenario in the Middle East, in Syria is falling. It has fallen. Syria was kind of hobbled together, as I believe, in the 1950s. It's just kind of, the borders are kind of a joke, and the people over there, they kind of give tacit recognition to borders when it suits them. Those are lines drawn in the sand. And the sand moves and shifts, and the lines shift. It's not hard borders like we have here, for instance, in the United States, where our borders are oceans and states that are established with happy little signs that say welcome to, or you are now leaving. It's not that way. Where you've got the kinds of rules they have over there in the Middle East and also African nations, for instance, where you've got warlords, and so borders expand and they shrink and they move around, and it's always been this way. It's been this way with empires in the past. But something that's very common and applies to all of this is you look at the empires in the past. Pull up on your computer sometime, and maybe I can do that here and overlay it. The Babylonian Empire. And if you look in the Babylonian Empire, you're going to see Israel as in part in the center of, roughly, it's going to be in the Babylonian Empire. It's incorporated into the Babylonian Empire. All these world empires have always incorporated Israel, and you will see Jerusalem in there. Enter the Greek Empire, Medo-Persian Empire, the Roman Empire. Even though the Roman Empire, which is supposed to be renewed in the end, and yes, it comes out of Rome, the Roman Empire isn't just about the West in Europe. What you'll see the Western Europe included all the way over down into the Middle East, just as in the past. And there in the Middle East, what you're going to see Jerusalem in there incorporated into the ancient Roman Empire, and it will be in the last days empire. But really, the very last empires, let's put it that way, because there's a final kingdom that sees Christ as Messiah sitting on the throne of David, will encompass the whole world. Do you remember Daniel's dream, the vision Daniel had with the statue and the great stone, the rock, Messiah coming and knocking that over, crushing it, crumbling the entire statue, and then the rock growing and filling the whole world? Well, that's the Messiah's kingdom. That's the Messianic kingdom. No, that's not up there in heaven. That's not the people there and the statues there on the earth, and then we get taken up and we're in a heavenly kingdom. That is the rock coming down and crushing the world's kingdom, and the rock growing and encompassing or incorporating the whole world. So it's an earthly kingdom. And we also know this because he's going to sit on his throne and he's going to rule with a rod of iron. A rod of iron, that's emblematic always of discipline. Well, why do you need to rule with a rod of iron in heaven? There's sin in heaven? That doesn't make sense, does it? You're going to have children in heaven. A small child will be able to play in a viper pit and not be poisoned, not be bitten. So there's going to be small children, and is he going to be stuck as a child for his entire life, or her? So the vipers in heaven, and lions on the road to Judea, to Israel, to Jerusalem, because we read in the Old Testament all kinds of animals that are going to be there, and it's because it's here on the earth. It's going to be the times of refreshing, the times of renewal. I believe it's in Matthew 19 where it's the time of renewal that Jesus brings upon the earth, because he's going to come and he's going to have to clean up this mess that will be left over from all of the events that happen in the book of Revelation. So it's all coming upon the earth. It's coming, and it's getting closer and closer. So what happened? So you say, Dave, you're taking a long time around, of where are you going with this? Well, because it looks like there's a retraction of things going on. Oh, now it could be everything can pull out and back out, and who knows now how long it's going to be before we pop off with World War III, Gog and Magog, and we don't know when the rapture is going to be, etc., etc. Except that we have to remember that remember some of the things that people will be saying in the last days. You've heard this quote many times, and we also see it in 1 Thessalonians, but people will be saying peace and security, or peace and safety. And so we've got a scenario here where it looked like if things had kept going with the current administration, and they had been reelected and stayed in and as puppets for whoever's really running things in this country, and the rest of the world would be emboldened to continue the way they are continuing, or have been continuing, then things would go, might even be popping off even by now. Let's face it. But some things are retracting. Some people are pulling up stops, pulling up stakes, I guess, really, and backing out a little bit. Iran is backing out of Syria. They're not going to go far, but they're getting out of harm's way, because it's free for all right now. And they have the IDF forces in there, and they're making a buffer zone, and they're trying to protect their land as much as possible. That's why they will not give up the so-called West Bank, which is Samaria, because it sits on a high spot where they could set up a bunch of cannons and tanks and everything else. It's bad enough the way it is now with launching missiles. It's bad enough now. It's bad enough now in Israel with the way the surrounding nations are lobbing missiles at them, sending even ICBMs toward them. Thankfully, none of them are nuclear yet. So sitting up there in Samaria in the so-called West Bank and being able to have line of sight and fire things at Israel is just untenable. It's not going to work. So Israel is smaller than the state of New Jersey, and they must expand their buffer zone a little bit for protection, and that's what they're doing over by Syria and up north in Lebanon, and broadening those boundaries and borders a little bit. So they are going to reach a comfort level now where they say, wow, we've pushed back the Shia Muslims to a sufficient point now. We've had this happen in Gaza last October 7th, October 2023. And they were able to, they use bulldozers and all kinds of things and forklifts to lift up the fence and bulldozers to push down the fence in other places, and they came through and they just murdered people pell-mell. It was awful. So they need a buffer zone, and they need to keep that from happening, and they're saying never again. This is ridiculous. It's evil. So where does that leave us now? What does that mean? Well, they're going to be saying peace and safety, peace and security. So while people are saying peace and security, that's when the Gog and Magog war will kick off. And you see how quickly Iran is leaving and how quickly Russia is backing away. That quickly they can roll back in again. It doesn't take long. They're not going to go off very far. They're not going thousands of miles back and pulling back and grabbing all their equipment and taking all that home. They're getting their armies and their forces out of harm's way and to look like they're not doing anything too provocative. And we have this stuff going on in Asia, which might affect we here in the States, and not sure, other than by secondary and tertiary activities, how that's going to affect Israel. But, when the cat's away or busy with their own troubles, the mouse will play. And the mice are going to be those nations that surround Israel. So one of the things we see is we've seen, this is where we are at today. We have seen Israel rolling into these territories. Every area they go into, it's like gopher mounds, gopher holes. There's tunnels everywhere, and there are all these weapons. And they bomb these buildings and they bomb these tunnels, and you can see all these secondary explosions popping off everywhere. Well, what they're saying now in Syria as they try to eliminate all of Assad's weapons are those old chemical weapons. Like the chemical weapons that the United States back several years ago said that Saddam Hussein hid, and when they were under siege, when Iraq was under siege, and he sent them to Assad in Syria, and everybody said, no, that's fake news, that didn't happen. We went there unprovoked and he never had any of these chemical weapons. Well, the intelligence had shown before that they got moved into Syria, and here they are. And many of those are dead and defunct, but Assad kept many of those programs going and gassed thousands and thousands of his own people. He's not very friendly to the Christians and not friendly at all to the Kurds and others. So we have lots of areas over there that have noxious smoke burning now because Israel has been blowing up these chemical stores. Now, many of these are in tunnels. They have ridiculous tunnels over in Syria and in Lebanon. But in Syria, they are finding. Now, we have this, I want to bring this in, Isaiah 17:1, and everyone should be familiar with this by now because this is really unique. And this is about Damascus. Now, if we look here, we see Isaiah 17, an oracle concerning Damascus. Behold, Damascus will cease to be a city and will become a heap of ruins. The rest of the passage is interesting too, but Damascus is the kickoff point right here. Damascus will cease to be a city. Why is that significant? Because of all the cities in the world that we're aware of, that we have chronicled, I'm not sure what's going on in China, and how old is Beijing? I don't know. I think I probably looked that up at one time, or I probably learned in school, but school was a long time away for this boy. But Damascus, you remember, the scriptures and prophecy are all about the Middle East. So let's look at the Middle East. Damascus, notably, is among the more ancient cities in the world. Some say it is the most ancient city in the world that has been continuously dwelt in. Continuously, it's been a city. It's never come to ruin and dust blow over it like ancient Babylon, only to be rediscovered again. And hey, look, we found ancient Babylon, and they're brushing the dust off. And now Babylon is a big tourist spot, and people are in there every day, in the many hundreds, if not thousands, touring through Babylon as they try to restore it and brush all the dust off. Saddam Hussein, most notably, we remember, was trying to restore Babylon, and they were looking to maybe rebuild the Tower of Babel and all of that stuff. But it went through this period where it wasn't indwelt at all. Babylon, ancient Babylon, we know is supposed to be there in the end, but these world civilizations are going to be global at some point. So ancient Babylon, some people will look at Mystery Babylon as something different, but Babylon, the mystery about Babylon is that whole system will be a global system in the very end times. It's the Antichrist system and the false prophets system. It'll be a world economic system, a world military system. It'll encompass all the world's militaries and religions into one great ecumenical false religion with Antichrist as its object of worship, the false Christ, the pseudo-Christ. So we don't think of Antichrist as this bad guy with this long handlebar mustache, and he's evil and he's wicked and he's wearing a red suit and he's got a red pitchfork. No, people are going to mistake him for the Messiah. He's going to come in as the big hero, and he's going to bring about a temporary peace. When things like this happen, behold, Damascus will cease to be a city, this passage says, and will become a heap of ruins. Well, what could do that? Somebody could just simply drop a nuke and glass the place, and we can't rule that out, that's what could happen, because it's big. It's a big, we see the bombs that Israel's had to drop on Gaza to try to tame some of what's going on there. And similar with Lebanon, we've seen what Russia has been doing and all of that over in that part of the world. What would it take to make something, just a whole city, just stop being a city? Well, they will probably hit something in one of these tunnels that will make it unlivable for the foreseeable future. At least until the return of Christ, when he rebuilds everything and has to restore things, which all that can happen within a decade easy, because Daniel's 70th week, the book of Revelation events, we find from Revelation chapter 11 and Revelation chapter 12 and Revelation chapter 13, with careful reading, we find that it is a 7-year period. We find a midway point. We find that from the midway point outward is a time, times and half a time, or 42 months, 1,260 days. We find that language in there. So that means it's a 7-year period. It's basic math. I've had people challenge me with this before. Nowhere in the Bible does it say the tribulation is going to be 7 years. Well, Daniel chapter 9. And even if you want to say that Daniel chapter 9 is not the same thing as Revelation, you still have Revelation chapter 11, 12, and 13. Be the Berean. Look in those chapters, you'll find that kind of language in there. You've got the midpoint, and from the midpoint outward, or from the forward up to the midpoint, it's language like 42 months. So there we go. So 42 and 42 months, that's going to be 7 years, 1,260 days, and 1,260 days is 7 years. A time times and half a time is 3.5 years. That twice is 7 years. The math is pretty, I remember that from school. But Damascus, so something is going to happen that's going to pop off Damascus. So that's the place to watch. Keep an eye on Damascus. We, as the church, the body and bride of Christ, believers could be here on the planet for the beginning of that war when it kicks off. Many believers, many Bible prophecy teachers in particular, believe could be the thing that kicks it off, where finally Russia and Iran looks like they feel like they're confident that they will have the support of all the League of Nations and the United Nations and all these different organizations and groups. The whole world will think it's so evil that this happened. By golly, we're going to go in there. And I know it was those rotten, stinking Zionists, those Jews. Let's go after them now. That's it. We've had it. Let's go get them. So whether Israel is the ones that kick this thing off or whether somebody does it and blames Israel, it doesn't matter. It will give them the impetus to move in on Israel, and that war will kick off. But before God says, all right, I've had it, and he rains down fire that we see described in Ezekiel 38, and the great earthquakes and things like that happens, a full-blown World War III with God's judgment coming in, where he steps in and says, I'm going to protect my land. Let me show you who I am. And the God of Israel, Yahweh, reveals himself to the world and shows Israel that he's their savior. He's their king, and they need to repent and turn back to him, which they still need to do because they've been in judgment all these years because they rejected their Messiah, as the Old Testament prophesied that they would, and they did, and it's been a time of the Gentiles, or the times of the nations at this point, where God has opened up his plan of redemption to include all of us, and thank God he has. So keep an eye on this. This is going to be the big deal, Damascus. So all eyes on Damascus. Watch the Middle East. Something's going to happen to kick that off. That's going to be the thing to watch. So anyway, blessings to you. Enjoy the rest of your day. It's horrible what's happening. There's persecution. The people who are taking over aren't particularly friendly to the Christians and the Jews over there in the Middle East and Syria. Pray for them. Tell people about Christ, to share the gospel of Christ. That's what this is all about. Holiness. 1 John chapter 3. Titus 2:13, beginning with verse 11. Titus 2:11 through verse 13. And because we have this hope, this expectation of the return of the Messiah, we want to live a life of holiness, which doesn't mean we're going to be perfect. But as a lifestyle, as our pursuit, day to day, we should be living for Christ, and it should be exemplary. We should have those fruits evident in our lives. We want to be found ready. So blessings to you, and enjoy the rest of your week, and get to church, get into fellowship on Sunday. Bye-bye.